podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Okay, welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast, COVID edition. Well, we're totally in COVID for 2020. I don't know why I'm saying that otherwise. Okay, woo, welcome. Okay, I'm your host, Erica Lance, and with me today is
co-host Valerie Willis
and Vanessa Valiente.
And our guest today
is Scott Meehan.
Woo! Okay, we always talk about what we're drinking first, Scott, so that people can drink along if they want to.
Okay.
So I have gin and elderberry tonic with a little bit of pomegranate juice. I'm super fancy. Super fancy.
That sounds fancy.
Well, that's fancy.
And I'm going to be like 180 because I'm drinking it out of a spaghetti jar. With my ginger whiskey and Coke.
Ginger whiskey and Coke.
And I'm drinking Angry Orchard Rosé.
And Scott, what are you drinking with us?
Okay, well, I was going to go just with an original Coca-Cola, but I found a nice fancy drink that I like now. It's a mixture of guava juice and iced tea, and I make it myself, and it's actually really good.
Wow, you're super fancy. You're super fancy. I take back my fanciness claim. Okay. But only for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to go back to being fancy. Okay. So Scott, you are a writer, which is awesome. When did you start writing? Because you were in the military. Do you want to talk a little bit about your military and how you got to where you were a writer?
Sure. Well, I joined the Army in 1980 and did 7 years as an enlisted soldier. Got out, went to ROTC in college in Central Florida, came back in as an officer and retired in 2005. So a total time frame of 25 years in the military. The last couple, 03 to 2005 in Iraq. But I started writing not long after I retired. I did go back to Iraq one more year with a contractor. That was in 2006 and 2007. So when I came back in 2007, that's when I started writing. And I thought that I would write, I kind of thought all along during my career, since, I've been through all these different things, and I tell so many stories, and everyone says, you tell great stories. So, why don't I put it down on paper and start writing about it? So that's where I started writing.
Did you ever write before that, or did you just do it after retirement?
Well, I wrote, but nothing on a grand scale. It was some small articles, the magazines, maybe some letters to the editor. I was published a couple times in Time magazine and letters to the editor type of stuff, and wrote in my journal, personal journal, those kind of things. And that's one reason why I was able to remember a lot of stuff, is I kept record in the journal. Especially during Desert Storm in '91. I think that's when I started really writing the journal. But yeah, as far as putting them into books, I didn't start that until 2007.
Wow. Okay, so then you decide, because I think every great storyteller, as long as they have the discipline, are good authors. So what is the first published work that you had?
Well, the very first one we did, I did it with a co-author because I was new to it and I wasn't quite sure how it went, and he was explaining to me. This is back in 2007. You have to remember this thing called Create Space from Amazon, and you can publish your own works on Amazon. And I'm thinking,
good old days of Create Space.
And I would always mispronounce it, and everyone has to correct me, and I always say create a space, and they're like, no, it's create space.
Create Space.
And I would put the thing in there every time.
And that's where he and I put together a novel. He had written before for kids, children books, fantasy, and so what I did on that one was a semi autobiography. But I ad-libbed, some of my background woven in with some of his fantasy. He brought in the you know the books Angels, Demons, or any of Frank Peretti's books, Present Darkness, where the angels and the devils are in the background, that kind
Oh
of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we kind of engaged, converged that together and came up with a large novel. And then we just put it out there through Create Space. It's called Prince of Babylon, and he had all these fancy names for angels and demons and whatnot. And it's really a really cool story. It's one of my favorite stories. However, both of us said that one day we need to go back and have it edited because we never really had it edited. Yeah, we just put it out there.
Because Vanessa is an editor for a publication company.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, so Vanessa didn't want to hear that. She probably cringed. Yeah, if you can get past some of the verbiage and mistakes and whatnot, it's actually a pretty cool story. But anyway,
That's awesome.
so that was the first one, and that was the one we did in '07. We actually had a literary agent interested in that one. He said, "You guys can write good," and he sent the paperwork for the contract and all this stuff, and we were kind of moving along. I even met him personally at Walt Disney World, and then he he regretted that he had to pull out because his father got real ill and he had to go home and take care of his father. So that went out by the wayside, and I haven't really been in touch with one personally, one-on-one since then.
Oh wow. Wow. Well, that's unfortunate. Okay. So
Yeah.
then after that non-edited book, as a disclaimer here on Drinking with Authors, we do not put out non-edited books. Editing is a huge part of the process. Okay. So then what is your next publication?
My second one was when I did my first solo, and that was published in 2011. So it was between '07 and '09, somewhere in there, that we were pushing the Prince of Babylon and trying to get the literary. See, one reason why we didn't have it edited, because the literary agent said, "Don't worry about it. Once we get it published, they'll have editors and all that kind of stuff." So we didn't think about it. But anyways, I went on and I did my autobiography, and that's called Stone in the Sling. That's the nonfiction one that I did about my career, and when that first came out, it was on this kind of cover right here.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not
I have
covered
since
when you're showing. Yeah.
I have since seen this cover somewhere with some sort of apocalypse story. So I had somebody else do a cover for me, and I went to this one.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and because that's my that was based off one of my own pictures, a silhouette, and they just put some fancy background on it. So I did that one, and then about a year later, 2012, I signed on with iUniverse, thinking that my book would get a little more publicity and get out and about more. I signed some sort of package deal with them where they would do, they promised the world, and they would do 2 books, that one and my first novel I wrote. At the time with iUniverse, it was called Eternal Eye. It was a time traveler type. This is the cover, but it's a different title, Duty Recall, on it. I changed the title. But that's a time travel, and that cover, since that was iUniverse cover, changed to this one.
Oh, that's much better. Yeah.
Yeah, professional did that, did very well, and so I had those 2 with iUniverse, but there were some things, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this in radio shows about other publishers or anything like that.
For it. Trust me, you don't want to get me when I get a little more drink in me. You should hear what I say about other publishers.
So, anyways, after those 2 books, and they didn't really promise me the world. They kept wanting more money for this and more money than that, and even to order my own books was probably twice or 3 times as high as when I ordered them my own from Amazon. So I kind of pulled away from iUniverse, started doing my own thing again.
No, that's the smart thing to do because and this is a good time, if you don't mind, for me to do a little disclaimer. We have a small publication company that we started in January. It's called Four Horsemen Publications. Our joke is we're bringing the publishing apocalypse because we're really tired of the publication thing. What you got involved with is a vanity press that makes it appear like they're a genuine publisher that wants to help you, but you pay so much money, and they don't. they don't give it to you and give you what they should for it. And it really, that and other things that happen with traditional publishers drive me completely crazy, because they take somebody who has art and is trying to get their art into the world and make it so you get disappointed and pushed down and all this other stuff. And it's hard, and it's sometimes hard for people to recover from having the levels of disappointment that can occur from that. It really does drive me crazy.
And the shift below that is a lot of people don't realize that there's a subsect. So you got vanity presses where you don't really have much control over your cover or the design of the book. The better step would be, if you're going to decide to self-publish, but you want a contractor to handle that, you do a author services where you get to approve the cover and have a say-so in every aspect.
Stop pushing off the services. Shut up and drink your whiskey.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
But it's better to have a publisher because they handle it. They know how to market it. They push the book, and you can just write. And that's every writer's dream.
Yeah, I wasn't very wise when it came to what you call the vanity. And to make matters worse, I did it a second time. I didn't learn my lesson the first time because I had an acquisition officer called me and said, "Hey, so this kind of goes into the third book. I started a series, and it began with the Green Berets going into Afghanistan right after 9/11. One of the Green Berets, a medic, was sent to a local hospital to help the medical staff there work on some casualties. And there he meets this Afghan girl who's a nurse working for her stepfather, who's the doctor. And they kind of hit it off. Just to kind of give you a little background, her dad was a Soviet officer from when the Russians were there. And he had married, got together with one of the local girls there. And she was a baby when the Russians left, and she got left behind. They couldn't take her. And the mother got killed in the firefight. But anyways, so the Taliban's ready to execute her because someone reported that she's talking to this American soldier, and he gets wind of it that they're about to execute her. So he takes a couple of his buddies and a couple of the Afghan people they're helping, and they rescue her. And during that firefight, they all get separated, and she leads them up this mountain trail to a hidden cave where they hide out. And that's where the relationship really develops. And then the rest is history. They try to get linked back up with his team. And so it's a military romance.
Oh, wow.
And it's called Love in the House of War. The first, and back then I tried a pen name to try to pull away from High Universe. So then I was going by Al M. Scott, and that was the Love in the House of War.
Oh.
And then somebody read that, an acquisition officer read that for a company called Tate Publishing. I don't know if you ever heard of Tate Publishing.
Yes. And look at you too, look at me.
Yeah.
Well, Tate Publishing did two books.
So many of their books hit my day job. We usually have to take them, revamp them, and get authors set up that way.
Gotcha.
From under their contracts. So.
Well, Tate Publishing did two books, also one of those 2-for-1 deals, of course. Promised Me the World, just like Universe, and I didn't learn my lesson the first time. So they gave me this cover for the Love in the House of War, and then the second one, the Afghan girl and the American guy. Spoiler alert. The second book is set 12 years later. They're married. They're at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. They have a 12-year-old girl and two sons, 10 and 8. And he goes on to Iraq on a secret mission. He has to rescue an Afghan girl, an Iraqi girl in Fallujah, where ISIS came in and started taking over. And the tribe that the special forces were working in back in the 04 and 05 time frame requested that they come take his daughter out of here before the ISIS takes her, and they had some information to exchange. And so anyways, that's all the second book. It's called Flame in Paradise, and that's the cover for that one. And actually, there's two covers, and again under my a name, pen name. But that was the second book of that series. Now, remember I mentioned the 12-year-old girl. Her name was Asha Hawkins.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, when I broke away from Tate, I went back independent, went back to my real name, and changed the title of that one, The Hawkins Army of One. So, anyways, and her name, the 12-year-old, was named Asha Hawkins. Now that's significant, and I'll tell you all about that when you're ready. But I'll let you.
No, no, go ahead, please. This is your podcast. We just sit,
Okay.
you
So-
say what you want to. That's the cool part of this. Is we're all about the drinking and the learning things.
And I
Okay.
hope that you have a combination here. You have a combination of a book that sort of recounts your own experience in the military,
Right.
but then you've also developed military romances, and I love that idea,
So,
that concept.
Scott, I do have a question. I have a publishing, and please do not take this as I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm about to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Because in looking you up and looking your name, first of all, you don't appear to have an author page on Amazon.
Actually, I do have one on Amazon author page.
But it's not linked to any of your books.
It should be.
I'm on it right now. I super promise it's not linked to any of your
Huh.
books.
That's odd.
Sideline. We'll send an email after this. If you
Yeah.
want a little assistance, we will jump in and assist a little bit on this.
And what I'll do is somewhere in here or during the break, I'll send you the link to it, and you can see all the books on my author page. I don't know why it's not coming from the outside. That's kind of strange. But anyways, yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, though.
Yeah.
It's the
There's some
fun,
sort of
ups
kink
and downs of Amazon.
Yeah. So we were looking at you, and I'm like, we're finding it, but they're interspersed, and we don't even see all those books. So that's a separate topic. But
Yeah.
so what made you decide to go down the romance route? Because
Well, I just wanted to try different things. The first one, of course, was I did my autobiography and I did the time travel. So let's try romance. And see, I'm just getting started. The romance sequel was more of a thriller, kind of a spy thriller with ISIS and the special forces in Iraq, and there's a spy from the Mossad and the KGB involved and all that other kind of stuff. So, but what I'm about to tell you is what I launched from that and where I'm at now based on that. And I'm not sure how far out you want me to go, but that's
go all the way.
so the 12-year-old in that second book I showed you, Asha Hawkins. Okay, years later, she becomes, and I wrote this in 2014, and I'm telling you this because it's significant. She becomes the first female Green Beret to take after her dad. Okay, and her name is Asha Hawkins, and that book is called The Millennial Girl.
Yes.
Even though she's really, when she was born in 02, she's really a Gen Z, but there's a reason why she's a millennial girl, and I'll get to that later. But there was and that was strictly independent. That was with no publisher at all. And I also tried some other little things from that. James, of course, James Patterson. He had these things called these small books. I forgot what he calls them. Pocket
Novellas.
What is it?
The novellas.
Well, they're smaller than that even. And he's got a name for them on his site. Well, I tried this thing called Books 100, where you write BOOKS with a 1 in front of the two O's, but where there were going to be 100 pages, little quick reads, and I kind of broke it down. So this was the Millennial Girl Part 1, and then this one was a fantasy based off in the novel. She's in a coma for a period of time, but it doesn't really expound on that in the book. But this book here is all about her time in her coma. It's a fantasy one. We're in this land called the quantum zone. She's not dead, she's not alive, but she's in the quantum zone. So I did that one based off of that. So that was my first attempt at fantasy.
Very
So
cool.
so anyway, she in that book, Millennial Girl, what I incorporated into that, uh, first of all, as the first female Green Beret, she's on a mission to stop human trafficking. There was a rash of human traffickers kidnapping young girls from Washington D.C. area, but they weren't just plain young girls; they were daughters of high-ranking officials.
Oh
And
wow.
and it turns out that the guy behind it was this multi-billionaire American living in Dubai, and he made his billions on artificial intelligence, making those human robot types of things. So he's using all these human traffic victims as replicators. You know, some guy sees some girl and says, I want one like that or something like that. So they have to kidnap these different people and they replicate them into robots type of thing. So um, the president himself gets Asha Hawkins recruit her own little team, and they go over there and you know, they take care of business. And I won't give the story away. And they you know, get the girls back and all this other kind of stuff. And one of the climaxes is Asha Hawkins fighting their champion robot. This billionaire liked those Friday night fight types of things, and he always had a champion robot. Well, their champion robot was Cyrix, a robot called Cyrix, and it killed anything that ever. So they set up, you know, they captured Asha, and they had to fight at the end. So I won't tell you how that turns out. But
Yeah, don't give away that. By the way, I found your author page and I see why it's not linking.
why isn't it linking?
Because it's under Scott A. Meehan. Some of your books are under just Scott Meehan. So
You know
I'm
why I
gonna
had to
put
put
that out there. You got to add that back in if you want
yes.
to search.
You know why I had to put the A in there?
Is there another Scott Meehan
There are a
author?
lot of Scott Meehans out there.
No, it makes sense, but that's how I eventually found you, is going down that rabbit hole. But
Yeah, I should have said that. Scott A. Meehan, yeah.
Scott A. Meehan, but you also have to put that on your books because you only have Scott on there.
Yeah. Well, my last couple of books, I did do that, I think. Yeah, in fact, that's this latest one. Uh, what I did is I had several short stories, and but not enough to really make into an anthology. So I recruited some folks, some neighbors. I mean, there's across the street. There was a 10-year-old girl and there was a 16-year-old girl that wrote. So I got their stories, and so it's of all ages. And in the school where I was substitute teaching, some of them submitted their poetry, and so. I put all that together and other stories and put this anthology together, and it's called 21st Century Pulps.
I love
I love that cover.
And it says Scott A. Meehan on that one. It's got
that one just says Scott A.
Yeah.
and
No,
in fact, the poster is up there on the wall for it. So, anyways, there's that one. That was the last work I did, but I'm probably most excited about the one I'm working on right now. And
okay, tell us about that one.
Yes.
yeah, that one's due. That one
is
is due to be released in September 30th. September 30th.
coming up close.
Okay. This one involves Asha Hawkins again. Now, I'll give you a backstory. I started writing this in 2019 in June. It was my shot at apocalyptic. Yeah. No, hey, wait until you hear the rest of the story. So,
Is there a virus in it? A pandemic?
in this, yeah, I can give you my website stuff. It tells you, it gives you some back. But anyways, she and her protege is one of those artificial intelligent robots. I don't want to give a spoiler alert here, but anyway, she has a protege, an artificial intelligent robot, because that was her background in bio. Medical and all that, and she in robotics, and she was this real smart girl, and so she has a protege that teams with her, and anyways, so the two of them, they're going to Budapest because a neutron bomb was released, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but it released a pandemic viral type that was wiping out humans. I wrote this in 2019, and this virus was spreading around across Europe, and it came to the U.S. and it's caused all this civil unrest. And
Oh
yeah,
my God! Are
and
you a seer? Are
yeah,
you a
and all of a sudden, I'm writing this, and the real stuff started coming out. So I put it on hold. I said, okay, wait a minute. I was going to release this, but let me put this on hold now, and let me integrate some real life stuff into it, which I have been doing. And one of those, and this is what's really interesting, is the actual first female Green Beret took place this past July. She graduated.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes, in New York, it was in the New York Times. So I'm kind of molding around. I had to change her age a little bit, and to make it more realistic, and her rank. I had her graduating West Point, but the real one is actually a National Guard and enlisted. So I kind of switched that around a little bit. But the bottom line is, yeah, it's the end times. It's like the 7 year tribulation, and 3.5 years into it, Asha disappears. Okay, because she's one of those in the rapture. So the Cyrix is left behind, and she's telling the story. She's telling what's going on. She talks about you know what Asha did graduating high school and getting the Green Beret during COVID, and what was going on in the U.S. and all these things. So the stories from her first person perspective. The first half of the story. The second half of the story is a small group of survivors that come upon that hidden cave bunker in the Badlands, and they find Cyrix. But that one's from the perspective of the 16-year-old girl, and it's like the one across the street. I'm using her as the model, and she helps him with the journal, talking about what happened after her parents disappeared and how she joined up with the survivors and how they found this human robot and stuff like that. So that takes the last 3.5 years, and both what they have in common, Cyrix, the robot, and the 16-year-old girl, is they hope that after the 7 years, after the Battle of Armageddon and the return of the millennial, and that's why the millennial girl comes, that Asha will come back and her parents will come back for the millennial kingdom, and that's what that one's due out September 30th.
That's super exciting. What is the title of that one?
Silence in Heaven.
Awesome. That is
because,
very cool.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to send you some links that tells you a little bit. In fact, I have been sending out the first chapter and maybe the first couple of chapters to some of those, so I can send you out a chapter. In fact, I'd love to send you out the first chapter.
I'd love that. That would be awesome. We'd love to read that.
Yeah. Okay.
The question I have for you, because you went from working with a literary agent, and though that fell through, to Vanity Press, to self-publishing yourself. What are some of the tribulations you've discovered as a self-publisher that you didn't expect to come across in self-publishing?
As a self-publisher, the fact that I can't seem to I don't know, I haven't cracked that nut yet as far as getting out there and people knowing, like you all didn't. You didn't even know my site was there. So you probably see my autobiography has a big whopping 26 reviews, and it's been up since 2011. So no one knows about me. That's the biggest heartache being self-published. So as far as wanting to be noticed, I'd love to be traditionally published, but I have not, so to speak, really reached out to literary agents on any of those books since back then, except for this. I think Silence in Heaven, I'm going to start putting together some query letters and start sending it out and see if I can't get a hit on this one, maybe.
No, totally. No, I think that's a good idea. Okay, we're coming up on 30 minutes, so we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with Scott Meehan on Drinking with Authors.
This is the voice of Drinking with Authors. You are at our commercial break, and our commercial is, hey, do you want to be a guest on our show? Or do you have a question for one of the guests on our show? Or do you have a brilliant drink recipe that we've never heard of? That would have to stump us. But you could reach us at drinkingwithauthors@gmail.com or on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. You can direct message or even just leave a comment on one of our posts. We would absolutely love to hear from you.
And we're back with Scott. Okay, Vanessa had a question.
Yeah, so I was interested, like you said, your first project, the one that you co-wrote with a friend, you didn't, do any kind of editing. So now that you're self-publishing, are you having other beta readers read your books and edit, or how are you going about that avenue?
A little bit of everything. I've actually had different editors. Now, of course, iUniverse and Tate Publishing claimed they edited that book, those books that went through them. Now, I've had beta readers read. Right now, this Silence in Heaven. I finally got my wife to edit. She's an English teacher, and that's. I said, hey, I really need this one. Can you think you can take some time to do it? I said, yeah, go ahead. And so.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Her name is in the acknowledgments. That's awesome.
I've had a lot of folks email me wanting to edit or wanting to advertise, publicize, all these different things, and I keep getting calls and emails and everything all the time in the last several years to get my book out there. But of course, the catch is that everyone wants about $1,000 or so out of my pocket, and I said, hey, yeah, well, not today. I can't do that right now. Yeah, so.
Well, that and they don't actually help. I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but pretty much any of those advertisers don't actually.
A lot of times they'll throw a price at you all day, but when you start asking the tough questions, like what is the percentage that you've increased sales? How much of a rank jump do the average customer jump when one of your ads run? How was the size of your newsletter? So like when you go to like BookBub or Bargain Booksy, which I highly recommend any self-publisher to utilize, they show you the numbers and they show you, like I get an email by Written Word Media who hosts Bargain Booksy, I think Red Feather Romance and stuff. They'll say, hey, in the last 3 months, we've added X amount of newsletter. Would you be interested in launching again? Another campaign. So they give me a reason why I would run it twice with them, even because they show the shift and change in the numbers.
Okay.
So if they can't provide numbers and you can't find them and you can't see the work they're doing, it's no bueno. Mm-hmm. They're in marketing. You should be able to find their work someplace. Right. And that's usually the make or break moment. It's just like a tattoo artist. And this is something I've been quoted from book distributors like Amy Collin. You don't just let any tattoo artist tattoo you because that's permanent and that's going to stick with you for life. For sure. You want to see a portfolio. You want to see the work they've done before you let them touch you and who you are.
Well, this might be a good time to ask you, even though the focus has been on me, and we can get back to me, I guess, but it might be a good time to ask. How's tell me about Four Horsemen?
we can briefly, but then we can take it offline. So we started Four Horsemen. I started the idea of it over a year ago, and then I ran into Val, and it was the yin and the yang of making this a complete process. But we're all published authors, and what we ran into was what it takes to self-publish, what it takes to try to get traditionally, and it can be heartbreaking as an author because you want your work out there, as you've said. And what we found is we feel pretty much the publishing industry is doing it wrong and has made it into a place where only the people that they want, only the genres they want, only the books that they want get published, and it's a very long wait to get a book out there. So like if you go traditional publishing, I think the average pay is between 6 and 10% of your sales after their take, and only like 1% of the books do they put any effort into actually advertising and getting out there. And so when you look at being able to make money as an author, there's a whole way to do it. So we went, we're going to do this differently. We can do this differently. We've been there, we've done that. We all have t-shirts. So we're going to do it very differently than it is. And so we have very much the idea that in order for an author to be really successful, unless by chance your book somehow gets published and picked up and The Fault in Our Stars and everybody loves it, otherwise you need to do a series, and you have to do a very exacting formula on the series, and you have to have covers that market your book and blurbs that market your book, and there's an exact way you do that, and you have to set up your website and your newsletter and all of these things.
Yep.
Yes, there's platform building, because you have to do shameless self-promotion on yourself, as well as the marketing that the publication company does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even as whether you self-publish or traditional publish, it is now in our new age with social media and internet, every author has to build an author platform, and the publishing company isn't going to do that for you or help you necessarily with that.
Right.
That's why a lot of authors go with literary agents and hope that they'll help them build that, because the agent wants to get paid just as much as you do. But even then, there's so many gateways and red tape happening that award-winning books aren't getting published.
Yeah.
Strong writing isn't hitting the readers, and even messages that probably should be out there. A.K. Snyder is one of the girls we've interviewed in the past. She had a wonderful book about her own experience of being the mom that gave up her daughter for adoption, and how being an open adoption, and how she overcame that decision and the grief that follows that. She couldn't get picked up, and she self-published, and that's such a great message that's missing for years, I think, with modern adoption stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and self-publishing, I'll let you talk in 2 seconds, Vanessa, I promise. Self-publishing, the problem with it is you have to be an author and you have to be a marketer.
Mhm.
Like you have an entire job of being a business person.
Yep.
And that's where we came in, and we decided to do what we did is we're going to take all that business stuff pretty much away from the author and give you guidelines on what we want you to do. But in that, you need to trust us that we understand what the cover needs to look like, what the typeset needs to look like, some of the blurb stuff and things like that. We're very good at going, we're going to sell you, because that's what a cover is. We joke all the time about Fabio was on like almost 500 covers, 488.
466 known covers.
Exactly. But if you open that book, the character in that book is not Fabio. Like, that's not what was in the book. He was just on the cover and sold the cover. So that's the difference with us. What were you going to say, Vanessa?
Well, also, when you were talking about how much it costs to get an editor, that breaks my heart, because I know exactly what you're talking about. There's so many people trying to get someone to give them honest feedback. Because, like, if you give it to someone, and obviously you're lucky because your wife has a degree in English, but a lot of people just rely on the average person to go in and critique the book, but they're not going in from the perspective of what a regular editor would. And so a lot of times when you're self-publishing, it is very expensive to try to get a decent editor to take good, and a lot of people just don't have the money to pay for that. So it's, we want to be able to have someone look at your book, get the best out of it into your vision, but at a way that it makes it easier for you to afford it as well.
Exactly. And that's the thing too, is that unfortunately a lot of self-published people, even if they get quote unquote editing, they're not getting it from pacing, correct grammar, and you can throw a reader out of your story where they have zero interest in continuing with your book because it's hard for them to read, even though you may have the most epic story in the world. Very few people, especially in today's day and age, it's interesting because that's one of the questions we'll ask you, but like we always ask authors, when you read a book, will you read it to the end? Or if there's a problem, will you just be done with it, right? And most of them now say they'll just be done with reading because it's taking your time to do that. Well, you're not going to have that next sale and that next sale because all of these guys, that sell a lot of books, Dan Brown, you brought up those books with the angels and the demons. That's because every time Dan Brown releases, he has literally millions of people that just hit the buy button. Doesn't matter what he's releasing. They just keep hitting buy.
Right.
And, that's part of the technique of being successful.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
But,
And also, another thing is that a lot of people have the wrong expectation of what an editor does for someone. Like an editor is more than just, commas and grammar checks and spelling words. Like they're there to make your story and get to the heart of what you were trying to do. And a lot of people have like really bad experiences with freelance editors because they feel like the editor is changing their voice and changing this, but if that is the case, then that's not a good editor. An editor is there to help you, work with you to get the best story out there that is still in line with your vision.
Can you tell that Vanessa's one of the editors?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So are you the editor for Four Horsemen?
She's
Vanessa?
One of two.
One of-
But so hopefully that answers your question. You can always you look this up. We can always chat after this about that if you want to go down that rabbit hole with us. Absolutely. This is not
What's
the
funny about you talking about reading the books, the authors reading the books, they get started, then they stop. And I probably picked up at least half a dozen or more books in the last several months and probably put it down after first few chapters. I actually have one book that I actually finished reading from front to back just recently. And it wasn't that the book itself was famous. It became a famous movie, or not a famous movie, but a decent movie. It's No Country for Old Men.
Oh yeah. No, totally.
I actually read that from front to back. So.
Well, there's a reason it got made into a movie.
Yeah.
Somebody finished the whole book and went, we should make this into a movie.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the writing style for a little bit. Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? How do you have world building books? What do you do? Explain to us your writing style.
Well, when I'm in the writing mode, when I have something, a project to work on, like this recent one, a lot of it depends on the time I have available, and I'll take advantage of probably doing 2 hours a day or so. I don't want to get too wrapped up into it. Now, if at the very beginning, when you get the ideas to come out, it's probably more like 4 hours. But once the idea is there and you're just trying to put the pieces together like a puzzle, that's more like 2 hours a day.
Do you plot it out first? Do you do an outline?
No, I don't really.
You're a pantser.
Yeah.
You're like me. You're like Erica. I have this idea. I'm just gonna
I actually tried to a
One's
couple times.
I'm a plotter and I'm a planter. I do a little bit of both, but if the characters start going down the unbeaten path, I'm like, oh, where are you going, buddy? I'm gonna write this down.
Yeah, that's the way I am. I mean, I tried it before the other way with the outline, but I've gotten so far off the outline, it's just pathetic. So I just gave up on it. So it's like, I'll read things, I'll see things, I'll hear things. I got to write that down. I have my little phone, and I start writing notes and stuff. And this, okay, where can I insert this? And then, oh yeah, this would be good right here. That kind of thing.
That's awesome. So, how long does it take? How much do you get done? So if you sit down for 2 hours, how long do you get done?
Nowadays, since I'm kind of like on the second draft, and it take 2 hours on the second draft, I can probably get two full chapters pretty good in 2 hours.
Wow, that's
depending on the length of your chapter, that's roughly 3,000 to 6,000 words.
Yeah, actually.
Wow.
I was like, what?
Actually, in my second draft, like I said, going through it the second time and making sure everything sounds right. It's about when I spend 2 hours in the afternoon, like say for example 11 to 1 or 12 to 2 or something like that, I can get a good solid chapter in and maybe a little bit into the next. Not really two complete chapters, but one for good, sure. And a lot of times I'll just go back over that one and cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure it sounds right. So. Yeah, in those 2 hours, at least a good chapter. So, as far as editing, my wife now has, let's see, the first, I think it's 13 or 15 chapters of part 1, and she hasn't finished that yet. And I think I'm up to 5 chapters of part 2, where I've kind of said, okay, this is what I want for sure. Now, chapter 6 through, I don't know, 15 to 20, somewhere in there, I have a lot of stuff out there. It's just not put together into the puzzle yet. You gotta kind of arrange it.
As a writer, what do you feel like your little problem areas are? Like, I feel all writers have different problem areas.
I have too many story ideas.
Okay.
She's like squirrel. Like I'm writing this squirrel.
I have a whole other book I'm going to start writing. No, you're not. But what do you feel like your problem? Do you have a word you repeat? Do you have like we have an author that everybody shrugs. So much shrugging. We have to literally just do Control-Find-Shrug and get rid of all that first when we're starting on our book. So.
I used to early on found myself using a lot of the same words. I'm kind of a lot more careful with that now. So as time progressed, my writing has gotten better. So my problems today aren't what they used to be. I'm a lot more confident in what I write, and it's just a matter of, and so the editors seem, when they send me back, like my wife sending me back stuff to edit, it's a lot less than what it used to be in the very beginning.
Excellent. That's
Yeah, a lot of things is so. I'm not an English major. I mean, I do have 2 master's degrees, so I'm not a complete dummy. But I'm not an English major, so yeah, I may have some words not quite right or used it right in the right particular phrase, or used too many double words and little things like that. I don't see that to be too big of a problem when I go through the story, because we can always go back and fix it and whatnot. As a writer, like I said, writing's not my problem. Finding the time to write is probably my biggest problem as a writer. But beyond the writing is the marketing, is the blurbs, coming up with the right blurbs, finding the right covers, like you were talking about earlier, getting the word out to the right, having that platform. Who's your target audience? Are you wanting military? Are you wanting young people? Who are you wanting in all this? And so those are the kind of the biggest challenges is the post writing, really.
No, totally. That makes sense. Okay, let's talk about you as a reader. What, as far as reading goes, you said that you started a bunch of books and you've done that. What throws you out of a story the most?
I'd say intrigue, uniqueness, originality, and an excellent development of character, where you can kind of get into their emotion. That's what keeps me going. And that's what I liked about No Country for Old Men. There was a lot of that from different cast of characters of what the struggles they were going through, and how they came about combining, coming together against each other, conflicting with each other and whatnot, and how also in this particular case there really wasn't any winners. It was like a wow, somebody should have came out on top somewhere, but nobody did. Nobody did.
Try telling that to Georgia.
It seemed very realistic, though.
No, totally. Okay, cool. So what is coming after the one you're presently doing? Do you already have your next idea in mind?
Well, yes and no. I actually had 3 other books that I was going to come out with in the past. They've been on hold for one reason or another, and until this one, Silence in Heaven, all of a sudden just came out of nowhere, came up, focus on that, and now going out. So these other 3 have been sitting on the shelf. One is called Stardusk, D-U-S-K, not with the T. That's too original. It's about it's about a Iroquois Indian scout who works for George. It's a historic novel, fiction. Works for George Washington when he was a major, when he fought with the British against the French and Indians. And this Indian, she was a 17-year-old scout that brought back all this information to George Washington, and so that's that story. And then there was another one. It was a mystery on the lines of Agatha Christie's. Then there was one, or there was 10. I can't remember, where one by one they started disappearing, and there's 10. And I can't remember the title of it. Anyways, along those lines, this setting was in Iraq. There was different soldiers. There was an officer from this unit. There was a sergeant from this unit. There were different soldiers coming together, and they were sent to this outpost on the Iranian and Iraqi border, and one by one they were disappearing. And so there was a mystery on that one. And then finally, the third one I have on the shelf was a throwback to 1973, set in San Jose, Costa Rica, in an American high school. And that's based on my experience, but it's a novel, and they come across this abandoned church where a murder took place, and it involves KGB and all that other stuff too.
Wow.
I like how you always find like a little bit of a way to tie in the military angle, but all these different, like from murder mystery, the romance to historical, but at the core of it, you always bring in that military element. And I think that's a great way of branding yourself that way.
Yeah.
Because they can expect a variety of military work.
There was somebody who wanted me to brand myself as that military thriller. They just wanted everything to say military thriller, and to me, I was too one-dimensional. I wasn't able to kind of do romance one day, apocalyptic the next day, or fantasy this day. You know, I kind of still want that freedom to do that. Although underlining, like you said, is there's always that military underline. However, the one in Costa Rica, I guess, yeah, I could have a military thing to it, but that one, and this is where I have a lot more stories where that came from, because before I joined the military and spent 25 years in the military, my parents were missionaries, and we traveled all over the United States from downtown Chicago to the hills of Tennessee, and I went to like 13 different schools. So we also went to South America, Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, and so I have all those kind of stories too that don't necessarily have to do with the military, but have to do more with the young adult type stuff as a high schooler. And like for example, in 1979, a buddy and I we flew down to this was after we left South America. We were in college. We flew down to Medellin, Colombia, where he was from. And then we started hitchhiking from there all the way down to Lima, Peru, down the coast. So those make good stories too, novels.
Yeah, that sounds terribly safe. No.
Not anymore.
That's horrible.
Yeah, no, this is back in the 70s, although some people would say, well, it wasn't safe then either.
No, Ted Bundy. No, it wasn't safe then. Scott, you have been amazing to talk to. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that.
How do people find you? We're going to do the shameless self-promotion part of this podcast. How do people find you?
How do they find me? Good question.
Well, we just, if you're looking for him, it's Scott A. Meehan.
Yeah, you know, that's,
A-N.
if you Google me, okay, I tried this, and I taught college, and we experimented with this with everybody's name. If you just put Scott Meehan on Google, a lot of people will come up, and all my stuff's going to be way down in the bottom. Now it comes up with Scott A. Meehan, it comes up a little bit more. There's a lot more of me, and my links are towards the top. But most of all, if you put Major Scott A. Meehan, because of my rank in there, everything's me. There's no other Major Scott A. Meehan out there. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so I hope everybody remembers that. Major Scott A. Meehan.
Yeah. Yes. Do you have a website or Twitter or Instagram?
Yes, I can send all that information to you also. Twitter, I'm on. I have three different Facebook pages with as an author, and so I can send those to you. I do have Twitter. I have Instagram, Pinterest, and I have my own website. However, I keep changing it. For example, I had one with GoDaddy, but the subscription ran out recently, and they wanted like $200 some, and I wasn't ready to pay it, so I started another free one with Wix, and so I'm starting that one again, and that's the one I'll send you. It's got the information about Silence in Heaven on it. The other one doesn't. And
Awesome.
So readers, be sure to check our description for this podcast for all the links to contact Scott Meehan and find his books.
Yes, and we're going to help Scott, as
Okay,
if
great.
nothing else, get you all straightened out here, because I feel
All
like
right,
you're all
good.
looking
And
straight.
I'll make sure you have the updated ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, this has been Drinking with Authors. I've been your host, Erica Lance.
I've been Valerie Willis.
And I'm Vanessa Valiente.
And our guest has been Scott Meehan, and we will see you next time.
Woo! Woo!
All right, thank you very much.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance, for a break that would make it okay. There's always some reason to feel not good enough, and it's hard at the end of the day. I need some distraction. Oh, beautiful release. Memories seep through my veins and may be empty. Oh, weightless, and maybe I'll find some peace tonight in the arms of the angel. Fly away from here, from this dark, cold hotel room, and the endlessness that you fear.
Hello, I'm Erica Lance, CEO of Four Horsemen Publications.
Your silent
Oh, and a host of Drinking with Authors. Are you a frustrated author? Is writing hard? Are you not getting the words out? We have the solution for you. The Author's Accountability Guide 2021. In it contains accountability, 4 muses, practice exercises. We even have an online community where you and your fellow writers can figure out what the heck you're doing wrong and how to fix it. Everything you need is contained in this book. I'm not only a sponsor, I'm also a writer. Find us at the Author's Accountability Guide, because I know you're wondering how to make writing less hard.
lies that you make up for all that you lack. It don't make no difference. Escape one last time. It's easier to believe in this sweet madness, all this glorious sadness that brings me to my knees. In the arms.
Start recording. Okay, we're recording. We're recording Literary Briefs. Woo! Okay, so this is the Literary Briefs episode, Drinking with Authors, Rapid Fire Questions. I am your host, Erica Lance. With me today is,
Valerie Willis.
And Vanessa Valiente.
I like that Valerie put her arms up as if
I always-
anyone can see that.
Every time, without fail. Just know when I say my name, my arms go up.
Our guest today is Major Scott A. Meehan. I'm going to say all of that so that you can find him really easily. What you're looking for.
Easier than just got Meehan, right?
Yeah, do not just look at Scott Meehan. Look at
There's a billion of them.
Yes, there's apparently many. It's a very popular name. No one would know. Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. So I'm drinking gin with elderberry,
She doesn't remember.
tonic
she's
water, and pomegranate. You know what? Shut up, Val. What are you drinking?
Ginger, whiskey, and Coke.
Oh,
my
God.
God.
That was painful. Vanessa?
Angry Orchard Rosé.
Oh,
Okay.
Hmm.
See, this time I didn't say how great mine was because Scott's drinking something so much better than ours. What are you drinking, Scott?
Yeah, this is the guava iced tea.
Guava. He makes this guava iced tea.
Yes.
It's thoroughly amazing. Okay, so rapid fire questions, Scott. Are you ready?
I hope so.
Okay. Well,
This might be the tough part.
nowadays you cannot even remember what you're drinking. So, what is your favorite book of all time?
Well, besides the Bible, I would say, well, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it had one of the most significant impacts on me. It was called The Green Beret by Robin Moore. I read it just in his mid 70s, and when I went to join the Army in 1980, that's what I knew. I said, "Show me what you have on the Green Berets," and he got the recruiter put it plugged in like a little 8-track thing on TV and showed me all the stuff and said, "Okay, where do I sign?" So that book had a very significant impact. There were so many books; it's hard. One book we had to read in ROTC that I thought, "Oh, great, this is going to be a drag," but it actually was one of those I read from beginning to end fairly quickly because it was really good. And that was Killer Angels by Micah Shara. Shara. Yeah. I think they made a TV series out of it. Gettysburg, Turner Broadcast System did way back when, at one point.
Very cool. Okay, what is your least favorite book?
Least favorite is going to be Trinity by Leon Uris because, I read Topaz and Exodus by Leon Uris, and he's got some good stuff. And then back in, I think, 1977 time frame, Trinity came out with all this hoopla. And, oh, great, I'm going to get it. I didn't even get past the first couple of chapters, I don't think. It was a drag.
That's always I think that's always heartbreaking when you find an author and you really enjoy the work and then they finally come out with a new book and it's like, what happened?
Exactly. That was one of those cases. Other authors of note that I liked reading was Alistair MacLean's books, like Where Eagles Dare, Breakheart Pass, some of those exciting little pocket books. And when Tom Clancy came on the scene in the early 80s, Hunt for Red October and Clear and Present Danger, I was reading those.
Ryan series.
Yeah. So you write romance books. Do you read romance books?
Not hardly.
Whoa,
Interesting.
that's interesting. Because
I figured it would be a breakout. Let's try this, see how this goes. And now, there's no way I would have been able to pull that off. It didn't have anything military to do with it.
no, understandable. And we talked about on the other podcast that military is the theme. I'm just curious because going into the realm of romance, I should have a theme song that says that. The realm of romance, it is what kind of feedback have you gotten on your romance books from the romance part, not the military part, the romance part?
Well, on that Amazon site for that book, Love in the House of War, I think there are like 17 or 18 reviews, and some of them are pretty good. Or actually, all the reviews are good. I don't know if they differentiated the military part versus the love part, other than I got a lot of I can really identify with those characters. I can really feel what they're going through, and a lot of it was written by a man who was very detailed, and act like he was there. He knew the land and all that kind of stuff, But those were most of the feedback. I am trying to recall if there was anything about the love story. I think there might have been a couple, but I don't remember. It's been a while since most of those reviews happened shortly after the book was published. And just like you were saying, because nobody can find me, I guess all these reviews I do have are from way back when they were first published.
A fun fact, and this is a good informational tidbit for any author listening, is you can contact Amazon and give them the list of ISBN numbers or even the URL links to the different editions of it and ask them to consolidate the editions onto a single detail, and it brings all those reviews together.
I have done that for some of them, yes.
Very cool. Did you find it difficult at all to write the romance parts? I'm not going to ask you that on the military parts because I doubt you found it difficult to write the military parts. But on the romance parts, did you find that difficult at all?
There's a little challenging coming from the female's perspective. Not so much from the soldier male's perspective, but from hers, yes. And in fact, she wasn't really an American. I used a cultural girl whose father was Russian, mother was from Uzbekistan. She was born in Afghanistan, and she had a Muslim background, and this soldier is a Christian background. So I try to merge my own experience with mixing the Christian Muslim and my relationship with young ladies. And when I say that, not so much romantic, because when I was in Iraq and I was a leader, I had probably I would say about 10 Iraqis working for me in the embassy. It was one of Saddam's old palaces, and they were all about middle 20s age females. They're Muslim in background mostly. And I got to know them really well, and I even learned some Arabic and talked with them. So I kind of think I used most of their background for this girl I put in Afghanistan, what she might be thinking in terms of her relationship with an American soldier.
Yeah, question. Like, because I know you said or mentioned in the your first podcast that your wife does a lot of, reads through and checks for grammatical errors. So is she beta reading also for the aspect of like the romance part from a woman's perspective, or do you have any other females that read your stories just to kind of give you insight onto what we would consider going into a story?
Well, my daughter-in-law read Love in the House of War, and even had a review on it on Amazon. It was really good. She gave it a 5-star, and she's one of the ones who's talking about identifying with the characters, and it was realistic. So I'm assuming she also meant from the girl's perspective as well.
Yeah, no, it's always interesting when you talk to a male that writes a male-female romance, or even a male that writes a female-female romance. That happens, and it's interesting sometimes because I don't think it's taken into consideration of the either side, because I've also seen females write romance and they don't write the males quite the way they would be.
This one right here.
Yeah. All my main characters are male because it's easier for me to link with it, because I was a tomboy growing up.
So
right.
But you don't always have that, and so sometimes when the males write the romance and stuff, you're reading it and you're like, what, this dame walks into the office and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Well, I don't by any means consider myself an expert on females. Of course, I had my mom. I'm married to my wife. We're on 39 years soon. I have a daughter. I have my daughter-in-law, and I have out of the 6 grandkids, I had 3 granddaughters, and one of them's 13. And so I know. And of course, in my prior pre-married days, when I traveled around the countryside and around there, I met female or girls from all walks of life, from Chicago, from the hills of Tennessee, from Mexico, you name it. So their multicultural background. There are a lot of variances for sure, but there's a lot of common things through I'm out as well. So.
No, totally. No, I think it's great. It's awesome. Okay.
So you were a bit of a military brat. I think it's the term they use, that you guys get to travel and go everywhere. And
but they were missionaries.
But they were missionaries.
That's different than military
different.
brat. This is what happens when you have too much whiskey.
Missionary
whiskey.
Missionary kids are called MKs. There's a big subculture of MKs out there. Of writers and whatnot, but yeah, military brats do exist. Our kids are military brats, and they traveled around the world and country just like we did as missionary kids. So they're very similar.
Very similar. See.
Okay, what was your question?
Okay.
You don't remember what it was?
No.
You don't remember what the question was?
Hold on. I'm doing the thinking face.
Military brat.
He's taking you back to it.
Taking me back to it. Do you think without that experiences in your life that it would have changed your writing and storytelling drastically?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if I didn't have such a wide variety of a lifestyle, and I always try to imagine the thing that's foreign to me to imagine is growing up and living in one place all your life. That doesn't seem possible to me. The only way I know a little bit about that is when the Army sent me here to Orlando in 1998. We've been here now 22 years. That's the most I've ever been in one place. That's the best I can get of growing up in one place, watching kids like this 16-year-old across the street, for example, who's helping me with the journal, and she's also, oh, I forgot to tell you about the comic book, Millennial Girl comic book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 I'll send you some info on that too. But anyway, she's helping me. But I remember coming back from war my first year, and she was just born. She was a baby. Now here she is, 16, a junior in high school. I've never experienced things like that where you grow up in one place and see these kind of things and watch people age and grow, like that.
So,
So
would you consider writing? I'm gonna
Oh, wow.
throw an idea. Here we go, because story idea, squirrel. Writing a small town romance where military transplants and roots for the first time.
yeah, I mean that could work.
That sounds awesome.
Okay, is this you giving somebody else stories? Because I won't let you squirrel out of the story. I'm gonna watch this from now on. If you're gonna be doing this with the podcast guests, you're like, I can't write this story, but because I'll get in trouble. But here you go. That's awesome.
Valerie.
But since it came up, and I did forget, the girl across the street is an awesome artist. I'll send you a couple of samples of her work, and we have a comic book about the Millennial Girl, the first female Green Beret, and battling against the bad guys, evils, and all that kind of stuff. And so we're at the point there where we have one. We got all the stuff put together. I need to go to a print shop and get it bound and all that do all that kind of stuff, and then try to market it. Hit the beaten trail and send a proposal letter and samples to like Scout Comics or Marvel whoever, and say, hey, look, here's what we're doing. Here's our new character, and yada yada. And are you interested? That kind of. So we're getting right into that stage right now.
That's super exciting.
Cool.
What was that? Her idea or your idea? Who came up with the comic book idea?
Well, I did actually a couple of years ago. And in fact, this past year, earlier in the year, let me back up. It was either a year or 2 years ago. I started with this artist who had to stop. We only got to through a preview, and she was having some domestic issues at home and had to go into hiding. And so I was looking for an artist. So this past year in January, I put out a solicitation on my social media. Hey, if any of you are artists and like to draw characters, contact me. And that out of the blue, and I didn't even know it, the lady across the street says, my daughter, Michaela, her 16, she does that. So she came over with her, and I was looking at some of her samples and said, oh yeah, this is great. This would be perfect, So yeah, we've been doing that since then, and she's pretty much got the first comic complete now with the all the panels and the color. She's
wow, that is really awesome.
Yeah,
that's super awesome. So I have a question. Besides your wife, have you actually had somebody formally edit any of your work?
Yes. If you don't count iUniverse and Tate, with the claims that they did, there was another, actually two others. One from Australia on Love in the House of War, and it I didn't even use much of hers because everything that she sent back was pretty much a rewrite. I mean, everything was different.
Oh wow!
That was for that Love in the House of War, it was like she was putting her story in there. I said, this can't work. The other one was from Indie United Publishing House on that 21st Century Pulps, the short stories. Now, when I put that anthology together, that was through Indie United Publishing House. I don't know, they're not really a hybrid. They're not really a traditional publisher. They allow you to use their platform as one of their authors, and they had an editor that they recommended, and I used. In fact, she was the one I met at the last book fair I went to. We used to go to a book fair, Indie Author Fest, once a year here in Orlando. Started back in 2015, but last year was the last one. They didn't have one this year, and that's where I met this editor, and she's the one that told me about Indie United Publishing House. And so for them, you pay $5 a month, and for their services of marketing they put out and whatnot, and be part of their newsletter and all that. And of course you pay them I think it's 25 or 30 for the ISBN that goes. I even asked her, well, what's the difference between the ISBN you're giving me and the one I get on Amazon if I self-publish? And he said, the one that we give you goes further out, the different venues and bookstores and whatnot. Plus we get you on the Library of Congress, whatever kind of thing. So, I mean, you probably know about that more than me, maybe. But anyway, so in a way I signed on with Indie United Publishing House, but they know that you're the indie author, and you do what you want with your book. And if you want to take it through them, they'll format it for you, and they'll edit it. But of course that costs, yeah, those kind of things. So I don't know if that's anything like Four Horsemen or not, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
No.
No.
Let's
Okay.
no.
Well, I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, no, totally. I wondered because you've had a very rough, I'm going to be honest, very rough journey with your books,
Yes, I
from
have.
everything you've told us, from what you've gone through, and you persevered. Let's talk about your covers for a moment, because some of your covers are just brilliant. How do you find your covers, or what do you do there? Not the ones that the weird indie presses and stuff, because some of those were interesting. That was my nice word. I'm doing quotations, interesting. But the good covers, how did you go about that?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I have tried so many different folks, and prices for covers range anywhere from about $50 to $250. There was one cover artist who I spotted on Facebook or somewhere online, and I reached out and contacted her. I said, wow, this is a really nice cover. What do you charge for your covers? And she said $500 a piece. And I'm thinking, okay, thank you very much. Very nice, but beyond my budget. However, I saw something come out from her site that she had a contest going. If somebody would give her a quick synopsis of their next book, she would do a cover for them for free. And yeah, so I gave them the synopsis to that Stardust, the Indian Scout for George Washington.
Yeah.
And I won. She gave me the cover for free. So, of course, that's not in hard copy yet because I haven't finished writing. But that's a cover. I will also, when I send you some information like the chapter 1 and whatnot, I'll send you that cover.
That's great.
It is the best cover I have seen. Now, the next best one I've seen is the one. She's from Spain. Hers is $200, and I can afford that one time. And that was the one I think you all mentioned already. You liked was the Duty Recall.
Yes, that was a great cover.
Yeah, it is. So, other than that, it's kind of a hit and miss. You find them on Fiverr. You find them on Facebook. I try a couple of my own, and so it's one of those things.
No, it is a very interesting thing. And I think, that's one of the things that as an author goes down that self-publishing route that can kind of rear its sort of ugly head, because you can also have an idea of what you want on
Yeah.
your cover, and then trying to bring it to fruition or trying to have it have the impact you want it to have is a very different situation.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like for example, Val writes paranormal shifter romance, and I didn't want half naked mid, but my marketer and everyone in my life was like, Val, that's the genre. You have to have half naked man on there. And I finally folded this year, and it's been selling on its own
Oh, wow.
really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so hard because you really have to take off the author hat and nostalgia. You're just I can't say the word now.
Nostalgic?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Emotions, and put on that marketer hat and try to
Yeah.
disconnect yourself as much as possible, because what is working on the industry also changes, so you can't fall in love with the cover. There's been 20 different covers for Stephen King's It, because they're revamping it to
Yeah.
bring the sales back up to keep up
Right.
with the trends.
Yeah, and I've done that too with some of mine. You probably notice on the Amazon author page, there's a lot more books on there than what I've actually written, because some are the same. I've tried different covers. Others, I've revised and just took that one out of publishing and those kind of things. But yeah, I've done a lot of experimentation with covers. But I don't know about. I'm an imagery type of guy. I like photography. I take a lot of pictures in all my travels. So for me as a reader, and I'm sure not all readers are like this. Some go by name and some go by other things. But for me as a reader, if I'm scanning the shelves, the covers are what kind of attract me first to a particular book. Say, oh, this looks cool, and then I'll pick it up and read the back and see what it says about it. And if it interests me, I might get it. If it doesn't, I'll put it back. But the front cover is what gets my attention the first.
It's true. That's the marketing tool. And that's what I think some people take for granted, is that there's an exact thing that will grab a reader, and they can't tell how great or how terrible your book is. All they can see is, does it visually stimulate them? And do they want to pick it up to go to that next level, which is the blurb? And is
Right.
the blurb or the little mini synopsis you put in your book any good? Because if that's not good, you're not going to hook them either. And then
Right. And that's
it-
one week. I might be good at finding people to do covers, but my blurbs are horrible. I gotta find people that know how to do blurbs. I can tell you that.
yeah, no, blurbs all these are little pieces that you don't think of, because it's interesting when we'll ask authors sometimes, give us your elevator pitch, which is supposed to be 30 seconds. Tell me about your book and your elevator pitch.
Right.
I am amazed how many authors cannot give an elevator pitch to
Yeah.
their book. And I'm like, you're going to have a hard time, because when
I
you're
know.
trying to grab somebody, you have to go, here's my 3 sentences to grab you to read my book. And that's not always what occurs. It's always interesting. The imagery.
Well, I admit I'm one of those that have trouble putting into words what it's really all about and being able to capture it all in one little synopsis. I have to go this way and that way, and well, kind of like our interview here, giving you all these explanations. Where I can't really just, it's this, like that. But
No, trust me, that's an artist thing, and I think that's pretty
We
normal.
like to blame the drinking, but it might be just an author thing.
yeah, it could be.
Drinking iced tea.
Yes, and guava.
Sal, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
Drinking iced tea.
I did not spike it.
So you said you've gone to a lot of conventions, right? Do you go to a lot, or only been to one kind of convention?
No, I don't go to a lot. There was one that they had here in Orlando once a year, the Orlando Indie Author Fest, Book Fest. And I don't know if you ever came across the names of Mandy Stevens or Tadra.
Yep. And now it's called Orlando Reads Books, I think, or is what they've shifted it to, and it was canceled.
Yeah, it's Indie Author Book Fest. They had once a year in Orlando for the 4 days. I always signed up for that one, and I had a little bit of a spike during those time periods, but that was about it. But the last one was a year ago, and I don't think they planned one this year, but I wasn't planning on going to it anyways.
Yeah, I think a lot of things had to get canceled this year.
Yeah.
So, but did you go just to be there? Or did you set up a booth? Have you actually set up a
No,
booth?
yeah,
yourself?
I had a table with all my books. Yep.
How was that interacting with readers and stuff?
It was very fun interacting with the readers, and I've gained several fans, a dozen or so, and so I send newsletters out to about a dozen or so. 2 years, not the one last year, the one 2 years ago, I was featuring that comic book with the first artist, and I got a lot of interest in that. But shortly after that's when that first artist had to drop out, and it kind of left me in a hole for a period of time. But that's why we're picking up again on the comics. I haven't given that up entirely. Last year though, at the book fest, I don't think I made one sale. It was probably my worst one, and that's why I said I'm not going to come back next year. So,
No, I understand. And there is a whole method to doing conventions too. It's all
Yep.
these tricks of the trade that that you never learn as an author. You don't get there's some guides, but it's not nearly as easy as it's supposed to be.
And and some conventions and conferences are meant for author-reader interaction, while others are themed for genre, and you're competing with more than just authors. And if you show up as the only sci-fi guy to a romance one, chances are you're actually not going to sell much because they're there to look for romance novels.
yeah,
So there's always that
exactly. And I think in this case, there wasn't too many readers there looking for anything military, and of course, mine's all got a military theme. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't matter. It's all we're gonna talk offline. We're gonna talk offline.
Okay.
Not on the podcast. Okay. So Scott, tell people how to find you. Shameless self-promotion.
Well, if you Google my name, make sure you Google Major Scott A. Meehan, only because if you just Google Scott Meehan, you're going to get a lot of it, and you're not going to find my links. And if you do Scott A. Meehan, it'll be a little bit better, but not as good as Major Scott A. Meehan, because there's only one of those. And you'll find links, everything from interviews from Lake Nona News to Army Times, to a lot of different book links. Major Scott A. Meehan. Other than that, I'm on Twitter.
What's your Twitter handle?
Okay, it's that one. I think I just changed it. It was Scott, capital A, capital Meehan, Scott A. Meehan. And there's a couple that have my middle name, Alan, in there somewhere. I should have written that down ahead of time, but I'll get that to you.
That's okay. You're gonna send it to us. We will put it in the
I'll
notes.
send that to you. So because I am on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, 3 different Facebooks, and even LinkedIn. LinkedIn's I got a lot of folks on LinkedIn that look at some of my what I put up there on books. I usually put some stuff up there on books, but yeah, interesting enough, probably the most followers I have is on LinkedIn. I don't know why. Maybe because I have a picture of me in a suit and tie and I look professional, but I have like 16,000 connected on LinkedIn.
Oh my goodness! Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, Twitter I can't get past 8,000 for some reason.
Oh, there's a technique to Twitter, my friend.
Yeah,
You have to go down that rabbit hole. It's completely different. Anyway, okay. All right. So let's thank you so much again for being on the podcast with us. It has been really exciting getting to meet you and everything like that. You'll send me an email. We'll connect again after that. I've been your host, Erica Lance.
I've been Valerie Willis.
And I'm Vanessa Valiente.
And Scott Meehan has been our guest. So thank you again.
And Thank you very much, Erica and Vanessa and Valerie. Appreciate this time. It was a pleasure talking with you all.
Same here.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll see you next time, guys.